It's time to make a new huge buyer's guide for you guys who are looking for a new MacBook. Last time I did the same video but for M1, M1 Pro and M1 Max chips, but now we have M4 lineup, which is substantially better and now has some new awesome features. And all in all, maybe right now is the right time to upgrade your Mac or to switch from Windows. What's good guys, my name is Oleg Nikitin and you're watching No Limits On channel. So this video will contain a lot of nerdy information about the SoCs, the Apple Silicon in general, so I do highly suggest watching this video till the end, even though you don't really need something like a music production or Blender or Xcode, but in total you have a full understanding of how the system works and which processor is better for you. The only chips that we're not going to discuss in detail in this video is the Ultra chips, because if you do need an Ultra chip for your particular tasks, like 1% of people, I guess, on the planet Earth, you do know why you need the Ultra. A huge shout out to two YouTube channels with awesome statistics and analysis of Apple products. Art is Right channel, a brilliant channel about MacBooks, and also MacStack channel. I'll leave the links to those channels down below. They did an amazing job in comparing different MacBooks and Mac systems overall, and they have a ton of different information. I would not be able to contain all of the information, to gather it, to analyze it, simply because of my financial restrictions, and also it takes a lot of time. So huge shout out to those guys. I'll leave a link down below, as I said. And also guys, we will not discuss Intel MacBooks or Macs in general in this video because they are really outdated. It's not even worth it. So now let's find out which Mac system or SoC is best for your needs. Let's consider the M lineup, M1, 2, 3, and 4, more of a consumer. And guys, if you earn with your computer, if it's your profession like I do, I edit videos for my clients, for my YouTube channel, I would consider the Pro chips or the Max chips or the Ultras. Now let's talk about the upgrade ladder. What's the first thing to upgrade on your MacBook and what's the last thing in the Apple configurator? First, we look at the unified memory or RAM, because RAM is the most important part of your system. If it's not enough of RAM, you'll have a swap memory. So you'll be using the SSD as RAM, but SSDs have, okay, like 8,000 megabytes per second, but the RAM itself has like 100 gigabytes per second. So it's a huge difference, guys. And if you are using a lot of swap memory, your system will be slowing down no matter you have a very fast internal SSD. It's nowhere near as fast as the unified memory itself. So the memory bandwidth of the unified memory in Max chips can be over 200 gigabytes per second, and none of the SSDs are that fast. Keep that in mind. So if you have not enough RAM, for instance, if you have 8 gigabytes of RAM, and finally guys, now we have 16 gigabytes of RAM or unified memory as a stock option. Apple finally acknowledged this factor that 8 gigs of RAM is not enough in 2024, 2025. So you'll be having some issues and you need to know how much RAM you need in the beginning. You cannot upgrade it afterwards. So I would suggest getting at least 16 gigs. 24 gigs for the Pro models would be nice. 32 gigs is mostly fine for every task. So you can check if you need more RAM by simply going into your activity monitor, doing your regular tasks throughout the day and looking at the graph. If it goes to the yellow zone or especially the red zone, you'll be having some issues and you'll need a lot more RAM. So in your next computer, I would consider getting more RAM. The next thing to consider upgrading is the family of chips. I'm talking M series, M Pro, M Max, M Ultra, because if you have not enough RAM, your even faster Pro chip can struggle, can cough a little bit, have some issues, and you'll not have the most amount of work done with this faster chip because you didn't get enough of unified memory. The third thing to consider is SSD capacity. So for example, if you do need and you do know that you have to use like a 1 terabyte model, you can get it and upgrade it. But if you don't want to, there are a ton of great options, even with fast SSDs like Thunderbolt 5 SSDs with 5,000 megabytes per second read and write speeds, but you don't need those speeds on the SSDs, and later on in the video I'll show you why. And the last thing to consider is upgrading your SoC or system on chip. So the stock models usually come binned. For example, the M4 Pro chip comes with less graphics cores and less CPU cores, and if you upgrade those for $200, you will not gain huge performance, and bang for the buck, it's not the best upgrade. The stock configurations usually do just fine. So the built-in SSDs on all the modern MacBooks, I'm talking about Apple Silicon, they are all plenty fast. So the lowest speed we can see from this table by Art is Right is 2500 megabytes per second, and you will not be able to even saturate this SSD speed without doing something crazy. So I would not consider this a main issue. 2500 megabytes a second is plenty fast for all of your needs, and it's really enough for each and every system. The only time that you could notice this difference is if you have not enough RAM, for example 8 gigs in the M2 MacBook Air, the base version, and you'll have a ton of swap. It'll be a little slower than a faster SSD model with an NAND chip, but I would much rather upgrade the RAM itself, the unified memory, than upgrading the SSD for kind of better speeds. It doesn't do a lot of difference. The binned chips versus unbinned chips are also not really worth upgrading, to be honest, because your gains are about 5 to 10% in different tasks, and Apple charges around $200 for this upgrade, and usually you would not notice this difference whatsoever. So just get the base chip, as I said. Speaking about external SSDs and their speeds, to be honest guys, you don't need more than 1000 megabytes per second. Even 700 megabytes per second on my Samsung T7 SSDs are plenty fine for video editing externally from the SSD itself, because you do not saturate those 700 megabytes per second. Even if you edit 4K video, 120 frames per second, or even the 8K video, you will not have a bottleneck in this regard. You can definitely buy something like a Sabrent SSD with Thunderbolt 5 and get around 5000 megabytes per second, but you don't really need it. If you do need to transfer 1 terabyte folder from your computer to SSD like every day, I'm not sure what you're even doing. And even though you'll have a fast speed in the beginning, the cache memory, but then you'll have slower speeds anyways. So I would do suggest using something like Samsung T7 if you add it off of your SSD. And really guys, don't be worried about it. If you have some doubts, I have the video of Art is Right about external SSDs for photo and video editing. I'll leave a link down below. It's a great video and explanation. Also, there were some myths and theories about swap memory. When you have not enough RAM or unified memory, your system will use your internal SSD as the RAM. But guys, if you use your laptop or Mac in general for about 5 to 7 years, you'll lose about a couple of percent of SSD capacity, so that is not an issue, not anymore at least, because when they launched the M1 there were some issues with swap memory. It was using too much of the swap memory and too often, but later on they did fix everything, so that is not an issue. Just stop worrying about it. But still, I need to know how much memory I need for my particular needs. So going into 2025, I would suggest getting at least 16 gigs of memory. You can use this model, I mean the base M2 Air, with 8 gigs of RAM, but it's not that comfortable, to be honest. I did a video about it. I'll leave a link down below about my user experience with this MacBook with 8 gigs of RAM or unified memory. So if you need an M chip, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, you'll be okay with 16 gigs of memory. If you go into the Pro segment, I would suggest using something like 24 gigs of RAM. In M4 Pro, we have it as a minimum option. Also, 32 gigs would be fine for most of the needs of most of the people. If you have a Max chip, you'll have 32 or maybe 48 gigabytes of unified memory, and it's plenty fine for like 99% of the people out there. I don't use more than 48 gigabytes of RAM anyways, even though I do have pretty complex 4K video editing timelines with a lot of tabs open in Chrome, in Safari, doing some stuff in Photoshop in parallel, so it's not an issue. For those who need 64 gigs or maybe 96 or even 128 gigs of unified memory, I don't know what you guys are doing, but if you do know that you need this much RAM, you simply know what you're doing and how to saturate this amount of RAM. I think most of the people don't need that much. And now guys, we'll have a look at different programs for professionals and you'll decide which chip is better for you for your particular needs. We'll start off with photo editing, and I do consider the Pro lineup one of the best, like M1 Pro, M2 Pro, M3 Pro, but not so, and especially M4 Pro, one of the best bang for buck for photo editing. So here I have some screenshots from Art is Right and from MaxTag as well. So if you do have an export on different machines like M1, M2, M3, and M4, you can see a pretty big gain between M1 and M4. So the M4 does pretty good job for photo editing and exporting. It's very snappy as well. So here we have a huge comparison of all different Macs for exporting 1000 photos from Lightroom Classic. And it's a very heavy and CPU and GPU demanding task. And you can see the comparison right there. Thank you, Art is Right, for doing this. You're awesome. So here we have Capture One and kind of a similar story. Feel free to pause this video right there, guys, because I know it's a lot of numbers. Here we have a comparison of M1 and M2 plus M2 Pro and M4 Mac Mini, and as you can tell, the M4 Mac Mini is faster than M2 Pro Mac Mini, which is mind-blowing to be honest. So here we have 500 photos export, and you can tell that the M4 Pro chip is almost twice as fast as the M4. That is why I told you that the M4 Pro is a preferable option over the base chip. And when I was saying about the professional tasks, when you earn money with your machine, I would go for the Pro version, not the stock M4. So here we have the Max chips, M1, M2, M3, and M4 Max, and you can definitely tell the difference between M2 and M3, and if you export 500 photos, you can see an even bigger difference between M3 and M4. So I would go for the M3 Max for photo editing if you have the budget and if you want like the latest and greatest Max chip. Now let's talk video editing. To be honest guys, for basic video editing, you'll be more than fine with any of the lineup, even with the M1 chip. The bottleneck right there is the unified memory. So if you don't have enough of unified memory and you'll have a lot of swap data, you'll have some stuttering in your project. But for simple projects, even the M1 is still doing pretty much fine. The export times are also more or less exactly the same. Here is the chart from Artist Right. And as you can tell, they have exactly the same encoders and decoders, video encoders. Now here we have only the faster encoders in M4 lineup. If we have a look at the general export times, you can see that the M2 Ultra is the fastest because it has 4 encoders and 4 decoders. Then the Max chips, they have 2 sets of video decoders and encoders, then the Pros, and then the regular M chips. In terms of the Puget benchmark, it's a benchmark which combines different tasks in DaVinci Resolve. You can tell that a couple of models didn't even finish this test for some reason, but still you have a pretty reasonable kind of cascading down chart, and you can see that the Max chips are much more preferable, and you can see that the M4 Max and M3 Max are having very impressive results. And when the system does not use the encoders, when you are encoding raw footage, for example, you can see that the raw power of the M4 Pro in terms of graphics is really visible compared to M4 regular chip. If we compare the Max chips, you can see that the jump between M2 and M3 Max is very significant, but not as significant between M3 and M4, so the M3 Max is still a great chip and you can consider buying it. And in the rest of the lineup, it's more or less the same, I mean the Pro lineup and the regular lineup of chips. So if we have a look at Canon RAW, for some reason with double M from MaxTag guys, so we can see that the difference is also pretty dramatic between M2 Max and M3 Max, and actually the M2 lineup is more of a stopgap chip, to be honest. I would much prefer jumping from M1 to M4 series of chips, or at least to M3 Max. So now let's compare the raw CPU performance. Here we have the single core between M1, M2, M2 Pro and M4, and we see a huge jump between M4 and M2. M3 was okay, but nothing too crazy, guys. Here we have the multi-core, and you can see that the M2 Pro is actually at the same level as the M4 regular chip right now, which is mind-blowing, to be honest. And here we have the M4 Pro, which is even faster, 30% faster, let me say, than the regular M4. And if we compare the M1 Max to the M4 Max, we can see almost exactly double the performance, which is insane, to be honest. It was like 3.5 years probably, and double the performance. That's nuts, guys. In terms of raw GPU performance, we have pretty interesting numbers as well. So here we have the Max chips lineup, and you can tell that the M4 Max is almost twice as fast, maybe 80% as fast as the M1 Max, which is pretty substantial. In Geekbench 6 Metal GPU test, we can see that the base M4 is not that fast compared to the M4 Pro. So if you need a lot of graphics, like raw graphics performance, you'd better pick the Pro chip or the Max chip with double the video cores. In Cinebench 2024 GPU test, we can see almost the same numbers, almost twice as fast for the M4 Pro. And here we have the M1 Max to M4 Max in terms of frames per second in Still Nomad Live benchmark. Then you can see double the performance between M1 Max and M4 Max, almost in the real world usage. So if you consider gaming, for example, you can check the M1 Max and change it to the M4 Max. In 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme, you can still see that the M2 Pro is faster in terms of graphics compared to the M4 regular chip. But if we consider ray tracing, if your program does use it, you can see that the M4 Mac Mini for $600 is actually faster than the M2 Pro Mac Mini for $1,600. And this is because of the ray tracing cores, which are in M3 and M4 MacBooks. So here we have the M4 regular versus M4 Pro. also with ray tracing, and almost double the performance of the M4 Pro. So if your program does use GPU a lot, I would consider buying the Pro lineup or the Max lineup of chips. And now it's your time, coders and code compilation masters. So here we have the M1 versus M4 Mac Mini, and you have almost like a 60% gain. And compared to the M2 Pro Mac Mini for $1,000 more, actually, the difference is not that huge for coding, at least in Xcode benchmark. So M4 Mac Mini could be used for coding, I think, if you are on a strict budget. So here we have the next one, M1 Max versus M4 Max, pretty substantial gain, but the most gain we have between M2 Max and M3 Max. So if you have a budget for the M3 Max, you can definitely get it and get the most bang for your buck. And here we have the M3 Pro versus M4 Pro. The gain is around 20%, let me say, maybe 25%, but the M3 Pro is a weird machine because it has different amount of efficiency cores compared to performance cores, and I would just not recommend buying the M3 Pro model. I would stick to the M4 Pro or even the M1 Pro. The difference is not that huge. In Blender, 3D rendering, and PolyTalk test, we see that the M1 and M2 Mac Minis are much slower than M2 Pro, and especially the M4 Mac Mini for $600. It's even faster than the M2 Pro Mac Mini for $1,600, so you could consider M4 Pro as your basic, like starting out in 3D rendering and 3D modeling. So M4 Mac Mini, great deal for $600, come on. So here we have the PolyTalk in M1, 2, 3, and 4 Max chips. Again, the difference between M2 Max and M3 Max is actually 2 times, thanks to the ray tracing cores, so I would consider M3 Max or M4 Max chip. And in terms of the Pro chips, again, M3 Pro and M4 Pro, not a huge difference, but still I would pick the M4 Pro any day, or you can even pick something else like the M3 Max probably, or even the M2 Max would be better than the M3 Pro. And for music creation, how many tracks they are able to hold on the timeline, in Logic Pro 10, we can see that the M1 and M2 have around 87-90 tracks, and M2 is even slower than M1, that's why I did say it was a stopgap chip. The M2 Pro has a lot better potential, 197 tracks, and the M4 Mac Mini has 130, which is a pretty big jump from the M2 and M1, but still the Pro version is better for music creation. And in terms of Max chips, we have a huge leap between M2 Max and M3 Max. So consider this, guys, between the Max chips, the hugest jump was from M2 Max to M3 Max. In terms of Pro chips, we have the hugest jump from M3 Pro to M4 Pro. And for the regular chips, the M series, from the M3 to M4. Just keep that in mind, guys. So why is the M4 chip lineup much more fast than the M3 lineup? Because Apple was in a hurry when they were releasing the M3 lineup to be the first company in the world to have the 3 nanometer technology in chip production and manufacturing. But guys, they didn't use the proper, specified and good tech process, which was not efficient, and the M4 chips could be the M3, but they didn't have enough time to basically do it, to test it. And finally, the M4 lineup is good enough with proper 3 nanometer technology and the tech process, which means you have better efficiency and better performance per watt. So the M4 was the biggest leap in performance and efficiency since the M1 chip. And guys, just to compare, the 16-inch MacBook Pro M1 Pro is almost in each and every category slower than the base M4 14-inch for $1,600. Also, the M4 has better screen, it can be brighter, 600 nits in SDR and up to 1000 nits. When you have a bright source of light in front of your laptop, you can add the Nano texture, it has quantum dot technology as well, and also guys, it has much more battery life because it's much more efficient. And also, if you do need a 16-inch laptop and you are not afraid of buying something like 4-year-old laptop, not even used, maybe a new one, you can buy it for around $1,300, and it's still a pretty good deal in my opinion. But to be honest, I would pick the M4 base model over this one if you need a 14-inch screen, just for the sake of, you know, getting some updates for more years to come. And guys, if you ever consider a Max series of chips in 1, 2, 3, or 4 Max, just get the 16-inch chassis because it has much better cooling. You will not have thermal throttling, it will be quieter, it will be better in terms of battery life, of course, and sometimes the M3 Max computer could throttle to the M3 Pro levels of performance because it's super hot. And guys, if you ever want to game on your MacBook, yes, you can game on a MacBook, and some titles are coming out for the MacBook next year, like Cyberpunk, for example, and it's gonna be native, but still you can play it right now through the translation layer, like the Rosetta and game porting tool translation, and still get pretty good results with the Max chips, especially the M4 Max. But I was playing Resident Evil 4 on this M1 Pro base model, and I didn't have any issues. The graphics were okay, no stuttering, pretty good FPS values. So if you do consider gaming on your Mac, I would pick the Pro version or the Max version of chips. And guys, do not forget that the M4 lineup of MacBook Pros now has the Nano texture option. I did check it myself in an Apple store right here. So you can see that the glare and the reflections on the regular screen are much more apparent. The contrast is not that bad. I mean, I don't see a real loss in contrast with the Nano texture. Also, the reflections are really reduced, and also the sharpness of the text, even if you are very close to the monitor itself, it's not even visible, the difference, I mean. So the Nano texture is really an option, and I would consider buying the laptop with Nano texture because in my opinion it is worth it. Plus they can go up to 1000 nits outdoors if you have a bright source of light somewhere nearby, and also those have a new technology of the displays, the quantum dot technology, and slightly better color accuracy, as the Art is Right channel approved. You can watch his review of the Nano texture as well. And guys, what you shouldn't buy in 2024-2025. First is the 8GB of unified memory. It's not worth it, it is doable, it can be okay, but you'll be struggling and you'll be using only one application at a time, and you'll have a lot of swap memory, stuttering occasionally, so it's not the best option for your main system. As a secondary computer, just some fur from my cat is flying around. As a secondary computer, as my travel laptop, it's fine, but as the main machine, I would not consider an 8GB model. Also guys, I would not consider an M3 Pro chip because it has more efficiency cores and less performance cores, and it is simply not worth it. I would go for the M4 Pro or save up some cash and go for the M2 or even M1 Pro machine. Should I save up some cash and go for the M3 model compared to the M4s? If we compare M3 regular versus M4 regular chip, 400% no, just get the M4. It has a much better performance and still crazy good value, especially the Mac Mini for $600. Then if we compare the M3 Pro to the M4 Pro, the difference is even bigger, so I would never suggest you buy an M3 Pro, even highly discounted, compared to the M4 Pro. You either save up and get the M4 Pro, or save even more by getting M2 Pro or M1 Pro machine. I had a full review of it for video editing on my channel. And also, if we talk about M3 Max versus M4 Max, the difference is not that big and crazy if you don't need the Nano texture and Thunderbolt 5 technology and slightly better color accuracy. I would consider M3 Max if it is like $400 to $500 cheaper on sale or on Amazon or somewhere else. So from which Mac should I upgrade to the new M4 systems? First of all, if you still have Intel for some reason, you'll be more than fine with even M1 system, but if you go to the M4 straight, you'll see a crazy difference. Secondly, if you have your 8GB of RAM machine, you can be upgrading to the M4 Pro base model with 16 gigs. You'll see a pretty good gain. And also, if you want to switch the family of chips, going from M4, for example, to M4 Pro, or from M2 to M4 Pro, nice touch. And going from M1 Pro to the M4 Max is also worth it. Other than that, I would not consider upgrading. So which Mac to pick for different professional usage? For photo editing, I would consider M4 base model, the whole lineup of M Pro chips, and especially the M4 Pro. But even the M1 Pro is great for photo editing. My wife is a photo editor and she is super happy with this machine. For video editing, I would consider a Max chip if you do have a lot of exports because it has double the encoders. But all in all, with 24 gigs of unified memory, at least you'll be more than fine with the Pro series like M1 Pro, M2 Pro, M3 Pro. Don't consider M3 Pro. But even the M4 base MacBook Pro will be doing just fine in basic video editing tasks, nothing too crazy there. For Xcode and programming, I would consider M4 as the base option if you have not a lot of budget, then the M4 Pro, and then the M3 or M4 Max chips if you have a ton of cash laying around. For 3D modeling and working in Blender, I would consider the highest graphic performance, the Max chips. The M3 Max looks like the best bang for the buck, but the M4 Max would be doing just fine as well. If you're tight on a budget, you can try the M4 Pro, Or if the budget is super tight, even the M4 Basic, the Mac Mini for $600, will give you the entrance to this world of 3D rendering. For Logic Pro, I would highly recommend you at least M1 Pro or M2 Pro chips. The best one is the M4 Pro in my opinion, and if money is not an issue, you can get the Max chip. But to be honest guys, I do think that the M4 Pro would be a super nice option for almost all music producers. And for regular usage, web browsing, typing experience, like office jobs, any MacBook will do, but I think that if you do purchase a $1,600 MacBook Pro with M4 chip, it'll be the best bang for a buck in terms of portability, in terms of battery life, performance, great screen, 120Hz ProMotion, the brightness of the screen is simply unbeatable for the price, I guess, and you'll be forgetting about buying any other laptop for 5 to 7 years to come, that's for sure. But guys, we have MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, iMac, Mac Studio, which one to pick? So if we talk about the MacBook Airs, I would not consider buying a MacBook Air for one particular reason, the screen. Because 60Hz and LCD panel is nowhere near as good as Mini LED technology plus ProMotion technology in M4 MacBook Pro base model for $1,600. I would much rather get this one instead of any MacBook Air right now. As a secondary machine, it's okay, but in terms of size and weight difference, it's not that big of an issue, especially in your backpack, you wouldn't notice this difference of size and weight. Also, the speakers are much worse. Also, it doesn't have the newer technology in terms of display, and the display is not as bright. So all in all, the M4 Pro MacBook Pro is a much better machine, and I would highly recommend saving up some cash and getting this one and forgetting about buying a new laptop for the next 5 years. So if we talk about the Pro MacBooks, I would consider only buying the base configurations of SoCs. So if you have a bin chip in your base configuration, do not upgrade it because it's not worth extra cash for the amount of performance that you get. Just the base model is always a sweet spot, keep that in mind. But guys, do not purchase Mac Studio right now, just wait for the M4 Max or M4 Ultra. Right now, Mac Studio is the worst value bang for a buck in my opinion. And finally, we have an iMac, and I don't see a real reason to buy an iMac in 2025 because it only has the base chip, the M4. If you are okay with the power of M4 for the next 5 to 6 years, you could buy it, but you need to upgrade it to 4 Thunderbolt ports anyways, because otherwise you'll have only 2 of those and it's a pain in the ass, to be honest. Also, you could buy it for the screen and for the keyboard and mouse and all in all the aesthetics, but in my opinion guys, it's much better to buy an Apple Studio display, for example, or a Thunderbolt display for $200 and get your M4 Mac Mini for much less cash, and you'll be just switching the computers themselves and keeping the display. I think it's a better, like, more fine-tuned decision, let me say. And finally guys, should you wait for the M5 or M6 lineup of Apple Silicon? I would say that the M5 will have a little boost in performance, of course, and maybe they'll change the display to tandem OLED technology, but I really doubt it, to be honest. And there are a lot of rumors and leaks that in 2026 we'll have M6 chips in new chassis, so we'll have a complete redesigns of the MacBooks, and probably it is worth to wait till the M6 lineup. I would definitely be okay with my M1 Pro for a couple more years. I think it'll be pretty easy to wait until the M6 Max, for example, in a new design and then switching, so you can consider this as well. Not 100% sure, but there is a lot of leaks about it. So guys, that's been it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope right now you don't have any extra questions which Mac to pick and why. And if you did enjoy this video, please smash the like and subscribe buttons and hit the notifications bell. Once again, huge thank you to MacStack channel and Art is Right channel. Love you guys, respect what you're doing. Go watch their videos as well. And right here, guys, I have a full playlist about MacBooks on my channel, so you'll definitely find a couple of interesting videos right there after this one. See you there, take care, bye.